Hello, welcome to another episode of Inside the Huddle. Today is Saturday, February 15th. This is episode 51 of the Inside the Huddle podcast. Make sure to please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for tuning in. We've officially made it. It is the 2025 offseason. Super Bowl 59 has come and gone. The Eagles had their Super Bowl parade yesterday, so officially closed the door on 2024. And now all eyes are set on week 1 of 2025. Free agency, new league year in just about a month from now. And we were just talking off air. It feels like so far what we've already seen, even going to last week, whether it was the Myles Garrett trade request, what's coming out of the Rams. Now you get some of the Kelsey retirement. We got an answer on Rodgers. It already seems like here first week or so, some Cowboys drama as well that we'll dive into a little bit later, that this is setting up to be hopefully a pretty exciting offseason with a lot of lots to discuss here in the coming weeks and coming months. Of course, you also have the draft as well, which is always an exciting time. So, DiMari, we made it. Another year in the books. Another year of our two teams being out of it way too early. But here we are. Everybody now, all 32 teams in the offseason. So, looking forward to going through this another year, another journey through the offseason.
Yeah, we're officially there when there's a ridiculous headline coming out of Jerry Jones in Dallas. Yeah. So, like you said, some drama we'll get into, but that's how you know off season is officially here. Now it's that time of the year where I can stress out about which one of our best players might end up in, Kelly Green next season, since that's how it typically seems to go. But yeah, very eventful. We got a lot of news to get into just through this first week and so draft here later on, combine, I believe, in like 9 days, if I'm correct, somewhere a week and a half. So it's pretty good that we are getting some topics, some news. So it's not as much of a dead period as we thought it possibly could be.
Yeah, and you're spot on with the draft. Yeah, next Monday. So a week from this Monday, that'll start off, or not the draft, rather the combine week from this Monday. So looking forward to that. We'll see who's out there. Some guys always don't participate. Some guys do. So see how much guys rise and fall through that process. But yeah, we'll start today with some news with the Jets. And that is Aaron Rodgers officially moving on. And I'll just say this, I always say there's never a dull moment being a Jet fan. Only the Jets can find a way to make headlines on Super Bowl Sunday. And they're not even remotely close to the game. It's not like they're the Chiefs or the Eagles, of course, playing in it. It's not like they're the Bills who just lost in the AFC title game before that, and you're still talking about how they can get over the hump and all that stuff. This is a team that the season's been over since October. And it's funny how Super Bowl Sunday, if you would have told me at the beginning of the season the Jets would be one of the main talking points on Super Bowl Sunday, I would have thought, sign me up for that. Here we are. This means we're in it. And sure enough, it's the complete opposite. It's kind of like a full circle thing where Rodgers said in training camp at the beginning of the year that he feels the Jets are one of the 8 teams that can get to New Orleans. Fast forward many months later, February 9th, Super Bowl Sunday, and the Jets, you get the report from Jay Glazer that they're moving on from him. I think that kind of just encapsulates the Aaron Rodgers era. A major miss, a major whiff, a major disappointment. I've said this many times with Rodgers. I wanted him gone during the season. When you kind of transitioned into the offseason and saw where they went with the coaching staff and just some of the options available at quarterback, I started to warm up a little bit more to the possibility of Rodgers returning. But I still think that this is the right decision for this team. Deep down inside, when you really break it down and you really understand what has taken place the last 2 years, what took place last season, and the need for this team to build a new culture and everything that comes with Aaron Rodgers, it's tough to do that when you've got all these outside noise around him. You question just how him and a first-time offensive coordinator would mesh together. Rodgers wants to run the offense his way. Engstrand's going to run it his way. Everything that Tanner Engstrand does, Rodgers has done the opposite in his career. Like, it's the complete opposite of, Engstrand likes to run a lot of plays under center. Rodgers historically doesn't do that. Engstrand likes to run a lot of play action. Rodgers does not do that. So that factored into it. It's over. It's done. They won 5 games last year. He tore his Achilles in 2023. I still think this team can be a contender or at least be competitive for the postseason if they upgrade this defense and they get a competent quarterback, whether that's a Tyrod Taylor or whoever else. I'm sure we'll get to the long list of names here in a second. But I agree with this move. I understand this move. It's a new era. And for Jet fans, you have to trust Darren Mucci and Aaron Glenn on this, that they're building their culture and they're going to get the guy they want for 2025 and then eventually figure out their long-term plan in 2026 and beyond.
I just feel bad for you guys. I really feel bad for the organization because it was so, hard knocks and all the hype around it. I mean, even myself, not a Jets fan at all, but thought they possibly could win a division and be the one to finally overtake Buffalo. Like, there was just so much hype and just expectation around it for it to respectfully look like Zach Wilson never left and Zach Wilson was still the quarterback during this Rodgers era. And, it sucks because in a way it kind of feels like that Grim Reaper meme with Rodgers knocking on that Jets door, and now it's going to be the next team to happen. But I agree with you. I think this was the right move. I mean, after that first year, the Achilles injury, you're like, all right, let's see what he can bring in year two. Is he going to be healthy enough? Just speculation with what he might do from that. You get him on the field this year, and again, they don't look like a good football team. And I hate to say it, but a lot of that does have to do with Rodgers. I'm going to use the term washed. I mean, with a roster like that, with a top-heavy offense like that, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, you go down the list, like, you look at that team on paper, and you're just like, this is probably a top-5 unit when it comes to the names offensively, and they did absolutely nothing with it. This was a defense just 2 years ago was a top-5 defense in the league. They looked awful from portions and stretches throughout that season. So I think just all around, and again, I'm not going to blame it all on Rodgers, but I think that was between Rodgers. It was the coaching staff, whether that was Ulbrich or whether that was Saleh. Like, they needed to start over, fresh start all around, starting at the quarterback position. And I'm glad they did what they did because, I mean, you bring Rodgers back next year for what, 6 games? He looks the same. Now you're like, is it Glenn? Is it Rodgers? Is the offensive coordinator? Like, what possibly can it be? So, luckily for you guys, I mean, you're kind of in this situation where it's Buffalo. You're not really dealing with Miami too much. You're not dealing with New England too much. So it's just finding out who can get you in there, win you 9 or 10 games, compete with Buffalo. You're not in a loaded division. Conference is very loaded, but I mean, again, Glenn brings that mentality and that energy inside the building that he needs. So you find your right guy, new fresh face. I think the Jets can make something happen, and it just sucks it wasn't Rodgers to do it.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I totally agree with that last point too about if you bring Rodgers back next year and there's 6 games in, it don't look good, and that's so many Jet fans are like, oh, now the Jets are back in quarterback purgatory. Let's just I gotta say this, and you make up a great point. The Jets were in quarterback purgatory whether Rodgers was returning or not because they don't have a future option. They don't have that. This notion that Aaron Rodgers was going to be the team's quarterback for the future is just not true. Like, if they brought Rodgers back, they'd still need somebody for 2026. They'd still probably need to draft somebody on day 2 or day 3 this year. And if they didn't bring Rodgers back, they still don't know who their future option is. The guy's going to be 42 years old in December. So I don't understand this point of, oh, the Jets are stuck in quarterback purgatory, or, oh, now they don't have a long-term answer. Yeah, they didn't have a long-term answer with Rodgers. He was going to be a bridge. That was all it's going to be. Same thing with Tyrod Taylor. If they go get a Kirk Cousins or a Derek Carr, they're just going to be a bridge as well. Jameis Winston. The Jets' future quarterback is not going to be starting week 1 in 2025. It's going to be a bridge, and they're going to probably most likely go all in on 2026 on a guy, but maybe take a chance on a Jackson Dart and have him sit and learn, and maybe, who knows, maybe he pans out to be something or just as a developmental piece, right? So I totally agree with that last point. And yeah, I mean, look, it wasn't all on Rodgers last year. They early in the season, he got banged up in that Denver game. Looking back on it, I think his whole, I want to play 17 games kind of got in the way. It probably would have been best for him to sit a week or 2 and rest up and get healthy. Instead, he only got more hurt. And, he went from at first a knee injury to hamstring to ankle. Everything was banged up. If he probably kind of stepped away for a week or 2 instead of saying, I want to play 17 games, it could have been a different season because Tyrod can go out there and give you a 1-1 in 2 weeks And I would have taken a healthy, fresh Tyrod over banged up Rodgers in what we saw in those games against Pittsburgh and especially Minnesota, where he was a disaster. And even you look at the end of the season, you want to say, oh, well, he played great. Well, yeah, look who he was playing. He was playing a Tyler Huntley-led Dolphins team that didn't make the playoffs. He was playing a Jacksonville Jaguars team led by Mac Jones. Not taking anything away from him. A win's a win. But let's stop acting like he was playing the 85 Bears 3 weeks in a row, and he went out there and threw 4 touchdowns like it was in 3 weeks in a row. He turned it up late in the season, great, when the team was already eliminated. How about the game against Buffalo when they went on a road against a divisional opponent? He threw 2 picks. They lost 40-14. So we want to talk all about the end of the season and how well he was playing and how he can carry that into 2025. There is context to that. There's also context to when you look at the numbers. Everybody wants to say, oh, well, he threw 28 touchdowns. He had, 3,897 yards. Both are top 10. Well, yeah, because he threw the ball the second most times in the NFL. When you throw a ton, what's the saying? A blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. When you throw a ball a ton, you're going to, if I threw the ball 584 times this year, I'd probably luck into a touchdown or 2 as well. And I suck at football, just putting that out there. So it's the right move because they need to build a culture, and I believe they could still build a culture by winning next year with competent quarterback play. You got to stop acting like Rodgers last year, who was 25th in QBR. Overall, you look at the advanced analytics. Overall, this was a guy that finished about the 20th ranked quarterback in football. You can find a solution. You can fill the hole of a 20th ranked quarterback in the NFL. It's not like this guy was top 5 in football last year. And you need Engstrand to just learn on his own and put his offense in on his own. You can't have Rodgers overshadowing him and doing things his way, because then that stunts his development and that sets this offense back. If you tell me Tyrod can stay healthy next year and stretches the ball deep, he can move a little bit, and this defense get better and they get competent kicking, and the locker room believes in Aaron Glenn, there's no reason this team can't be competitive and at least be competent enough to compete for the playoffs next year. I still believe that, and I still want that. I hate people punting on 2025. I don't agree with that. I still think you can compete and do what Denver did, right? You just saw Denver, Darren Mucci coming over there. They were a disaster under Russell Wilson. They move on from Russ. They bring in Bo Nix. Not really saying Bo Nix is that player in this draft, but who knows? I mean, for a while there, Bo Nix was projected to go in the second round. They picked him in the first round. Is Jackson Dart, is that this year's Bo Nix? Did the Jets do what the Ravens did a couple years ago with Lamar, and do they trade back into the first to get a Dart just to have that 5th-year option, right, where you can give him a little bit more time? Who knows? But just so many Jet fans are already like crushing Glenn and Muji. It's a new regime. It's a new time. It's over. Completely wipe the slate clean. They want a quarterback that's 1 of 53. They don't want a quarterback that's going to be doing all this outside stuff. And some of it's in Rodgers' control. Some of it's out of control. He's just a polarizing figure. That's always how he's been. You have to trust what they're doing. We can't. I've already seen people like, oh, Glenn and Muji are going to fail now. Oh no, Rodgers isn't going to. We're not going to have Aaron Rodgers for 2025. Oh no. Because we would have won a Super Bowl if Aaron Rodgers was quarterback next year.
Like, and you made a great point about him wanting to play, 17 games and him wanted the offense to run a certain way. And it's pride. He's a prideful person. If you watch the documentary with Aaron Rodgers, he's very prideful. So, I mean, the need to play 17 games just goes back to when he tore his Achilles and being told what he can and can't do. Aaron Rodgers, again, if you haven't watched the documentary, I really think you should watch it.
Yeah.
You'll learn a lot about him. He's very prideful. He does not want to be told what he can and can't do. He doesn't want to look like a failure, which is understandable. But he's one of those people where it's just like, you aren't going to write a narrative on me and be correct. I'm going to show you you're wrong. So him being hurt this year and wanting to play 17 games was pride, and it hurt the team in the long run. Him wanting the offense ran a certain way and him wanting certain guys to throw the ball to hand the ball off to also comes down to pride in an instant where it's like, I want it done my way. And obviously, it didn't work this year. We don't know what it would have been last year with the Achilles injury, but maybe it's just me. I know this is what if right now, but Rodgers this year, you said, threw for 28 touchdowns. I don't think he throws for 42 last year if he never tears his Achilles. He might slightly better. Maybe we're talking about 32, 34.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're not 42 and 6 interceptions. Like, we're not going to get that Rodgers. That Rodgers is long and gone. So
Yeah.
I think for the Jets fans that are kind of quitting already, it's like, what's the point of even being here? Like, you haven't
Yeah,
even
I
gave
know.
it a
Being a
shot.
fan. Yeah,
Like,
I totally agree with that. It's so stupid. There's so many Jet fans that are like, oh, this team stinks. Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji stink. How can we say that they're not good? How can we say that they're not going to be good in 2025? We don't know their quarterback plan yet. It's Saturday, February 15th. We can't jump to conclusions and say they're going to stink next year. How do we know they were going to be good next year with Aaron Rodgers? They went 5-12 with Rodgers this year. Like, people acting like Rodgers just went 12-5 this year. The Jets fell one game short of the Super Bowl. No, this team's season was over before the Halloween candy was given out. I mean, I totally agree. If you want to keep going, sorry, I probably cut you off. But
no, that's continue just what I'm saying. Like, free agency has not even officially opened up.
yeah,
The combine hasn't happened. The draft hasn't happened. And it's just, oh, well, we're going to suck next year. Let's get ready for 2026, 2027, whatever the case is. And again, I mean, we've seen teams, we've seen Denver, we've seen Carolina, and I know their record doesn't really show it, but second half of Bryce Young, starting again, we've seen teams be able to turn it around. Detroit a few years ago, where all it takes is a new face, a new energy, a new guy, a new locker room leader. It just one piece to come in, change a few things, and everything goes completely different. So for the ones that are just, oh, well, all is bad, look at Houston. I mean, there's so many teams. I can go down a list of teams that have completely just turned it around. So, I mean, you really can't give up on these guys that went through this interview process and have showed where they were at, where, hey, we can turn things around, whether that's the coordinator or GM, whatever the case is. We can turn things around. Why can't we do it in New York? You just got to trust the process, and that's all it is to it.
Yeah, it's all we can do. I totally agree. And another thing, too, is this is Aaron Glenn's locker room. This is Aaron Glenn's culture that he needs to build. He doesn't need Rodgers to be this big second guy and being a big leader. Like, Aaron Glenn needs to be the number one face, the face of this team. He kind of is the face of this whole regime, really, right? They hired him first. They hired him first, and I don't want to say they picked the GM he wanted, but I'm sure he had some say on Darren Muji coming over, right? Darren Muji had glaring reviews from Sean Payton, who has the connection with Glenn from his time as a player in New Orleans and in a coach under Payton. So they've got that connection there from with some of the Denver ties. But like, Glenn's really running this thing. He's kind of like, he's the guy. He is supposed to be that CEO coach. And you can't have an ego like Rodgers step in and interfere with that, if that makes sense, because I think Rodgers, which isn't a bad thing, but he tries to be like the number one guy in the locker room. He tries to kind of do things his way and try and, I guess, run the offense his way. He was basically running the offense last year. That can't happen with Glenn and Engstrand. They need to run this team the way they want it to be run, and you can't have any of these other guys stepping in the way. And I'll just say this too. I like the whole, I don't know how true the report is because it's The Athletic and they like to just go after the Jets, but we heard this report that they wanted Rodgers to get off of McAfee and they want him to show up to all the offseason stuff. I don't know how true that is. It's probably not very true because Ian Rappaport then came back and said they did have demands, but it wasn't exactly for McAfee and stuff like that. Either way, though, the fact that in itself, though, maybe I'm reading into this too much, but the fact that Glenn told Rodgers, look, here's a list of things, like, we need this out of you. This is how we're going to run things. Is it going to work for you? The fact that he was like, look, you have to do it this way or we're not bringing you back shows that he's not like, no more this country club environment where players can do whatever the heck they want. It shows that trying to build that strong culture of, if you don't want to be here, get out. Quinnen Williams, love the guy, great player. But going on Twitter after the Rodgers news came out and saying, oh, I got to sit through another rebuild, and then sending a thumbs down and then deactivating your account, it's a pretty bad look. This team's got to get off social media too. Like, if you don't want to be here, get out. I don't care what your contract is. I don't care how big of a name you are. This is Aaron Glenn's show, and if you're not going to be a fit, then is what it is. And that feels like it was with Rodgers. I don't care you're a 4-time NFL MVP. We need a quarterback that's going to be one of 53. We need these things. This is how we're going to build it. If it doesn't fit with your vision, then you're gone. They don't care about your track record. So I don't know. It's a new day. And I totally agree with you. It's going to go down as one of the biggest what ifs. It sucks. Like looking, that 2023 offseason was some of the most fun I've ever had as a sports fan. It's sad talking about the offseason, but the training camp practices were awesome. Hard Knocks was awesome. Summertime, the vibes were so high. I mean, it was electric, chanting Aaron Rodgers, and it was awesome. Unfortunately, it ended 4 plays in. The torn Achilles, as hard as it is for a Jet fan to admit that, I think some Jet fans, again, still wanted to run it back for another year, but the whole dream of winning a Super Bowl ended 4 plays in, which is so sad because he didn't even complete a pass, but it did. That whole dream died because the defense got significantly worse this year. I still think if Rodgers didn't tear his Achilles, they would have made the playoffs that year. Who knows how far they would have went, but they would have made the playoffs. That defense, they won 7 games with Zach Wilson, Trevor Siemian, Tim Boyle. You throw Rodgers on that team, they're at least an 11-win team, and fortunately, that's not the case. So there's a long list of what ifs. There's so many painful what ifs in Jets history. I personally think the Rodgers injury will go probably up there near the top of the list. You bring in a Hall of Famer. You got so much talent. You have Super Bowl expectations for the first time in a very long time, and it just failed. I guess, too, you can kind of look back on it. At the time, the Jets thought they were a quarterback away. In reality, they probably weren't a quarterback away, because I think 2023, you started to see a lot of the holes in the coaching staff come out. They gave them all a mulligan because of the Rodgers injury, and it was all backwards. And then Woody, why didn't he just fire Saleh in the offseason if he was only going to give him 5 games? So it's over. Move on. See what's next for Rodgers. Who do you think will be under center for the Jets?
It might be Sam Darnold. You look at that list, and I know we're talking about bridge, and it's like, does Sam Darnold want to be a bridge again? But you look at the list of quarterbacks outside of Sam Darnold, it's not attractive, and none of those names on that is getting that Jets team to the playoffs. So I mean, if you want to, run it back with Sammy Dimes and see what they can do, and hopefully he can be just 75% of what he was in Minnesota this year, you got a shot. But anybody else, I mean, no.
Yeah, it's not a great list. I still think it'll be Tyrod. And to be honest with you, I think Tyrod, already under contract, cheaper contract. Guys love him in that locker room. He actually received some captain's votes last year. I'd totally be on board with Tyrod. In a perfect world, you get 2017 Bills Tyrod, where you make the playoffs and then you find your Josh Allen. Now it's the Jets, so that probably won't happen because this franchise just isn't allowed happiness. But Tyrod is up there for me. He's a good quarterback. It's just he's solid. He's good for a bridge. The only problem with him is he gets hurt a lot and he holds onto the football for hours. But he stretches the field. He can provide some mobility. I think the next, at least what you're looking is, I would totally take Darnold. He's the top of the list, but I just don't think he's going to want to come back here personally. Yeah. I think that ship sailed. I would take Fields, but I think they're going to get outbid. I don't know if the Jets are going to go. Fields is probably going to want, he might get 11 to 12 to maybe even up to 15 million. It depending on how much bettors there are for him. I mean, he's got a job right set up there in Pittsburgh, maybe. We'll see, but I think it's going to be Tyrod. And then some probably other veteran. I just want a guy that's going to be entertaining. Give me a guy that can move a little bit. Give me a guy that can throw deep. If, don't give me Kirk Cousins. It's a glorified Joe Flacco. I want a guy that can move. Fields can move. Winston, he's going to throw you 4 touchdowns every week, but he's also going to throw 3 interceptions. So, you got to live through that. But
he brings entertainment, though. I mean,
he does. He brings
eating W's. That's entertainment.
You are right about that. Joe Milton, trade for Joe Milton, Bazooka Joe. I would do that in a heartbeat, but I just don't think New England's going to do that.
I mean, sitting there collecting dust behind Drake May. I mean, Milton showed some flashes of
he did
what he can do. So I mean, it's I don't know. This is your situation right now. It's terrible. Like it seems like there's no winning possibility at this current moment
for quarterback.
Yeah,
it's tough. Anyway, let's move on. We'll stay here in New York, but we'll jump on over to the NFC East, and that is the New York Giants. I've seen some reports, a lot of talk recently about who their quarterback is going to be these last week or so. Is it Rodgers? Does Rodgers go to the Giants, keep his house, $9.5 million house in Montclair, and just instead of going to Florham, he goes up to East Rutherford every day? Maybe. Russell Wilson's been thrown out there, but even Matthew Stafford feels like there's been a lot of smoke behind Matthew Stafford. This all kind of started with the Giants hiring Stafford's brother-in-law to Chad Hall, and obviously started up the rumor mill about the possibility of that to try and pry Stafford to the Jets, or to the Giants rather. We've heard a lot of rumors coming out of the Rams. Seems like they want to get younger on offense, right? They're trying to trade Cooper Kupp. Stafford, it feels like we still kind of unknown whether or not Stafford wants to play, but I will say this about the Giants. If I'm the Giants and there's Stafford's actually available and they're willing to deal him, I make this trade in a second. I especially make this trade right away if you tell me they can get Stafford and Cooper Kupp in a package deal and then draft a guy at 3 if they don't have to give up the 3rd overall pick, which I don't think they will for Stafford. They might have to if they includes Kupp, but either way, I mean, and then you draft a quarterback and have him sit for a year, because this is a regime that needs to win. They need to be competitive next year. Putting it all on a rookie to go out there and win games is asking a lot. Stafford still got a lot of gas left. I think if you're a Giant fan, you got to be totally on board for this.
That one's tough. I'm with you. I'm with you in this instant. You're not throwing a rookie out there. I'm going to use, I don't know. We're going to use Giants at 3. I don't know who. Cam Ward. We're going to use Cam Ward. You're not throwing Cam Ward out there to compete with the defending Super Bowl champions, the up-and-coming Washington Commanders that look like they're not falling off no time, and a Cowboys team that just had the worst year that we've seen in quite some time, but injuries as well. So when we see a healthy Cowboys team with Dak and Diggs, DeMarcus Lawrence, all those guys out there, we know what they can do. You don't want to throw a rookie out there and tell them, hey, compete with this, because you are putting them in the worst situation possible. You go get a veteran, a Matthew Stafford that's been in this league for so long, and against the NFC, has played very well against the NFC just throughout his career. So you go get a Matthew Stafford to compete, and that's your best chance at winning. The only bad side of it, you bring Kupp, it's like, that's great. They have nothing else. So you are putting Stafford, who is already 37, I believe. And, of course, they would retool the offensive line, but a terrible offensive line, no solid, consistent run game. Aged Cooper Kupp, who we both still agree does have a bunch of, gas in the tank, but not 2021 Triple Crown Cooper Kupp. I mean, I like Wan'Dale Robinson personally. I also like Malik Neighbors. So I guess they have some weapons, but they're not huge names. They're not going to go out there and be, complete game dominant. So you look at that side of it, you're just like, that's setting him up for failure. Do you think he wants to go somewhere and win instantly, where he might have a year or two and he can do something positive? That's the only side I look at it from. It wouldn't make sense. But from the Giants standpoint of it, I think so. You go get Stafford, and you have somebody sit for a year, and hopefully they learn a lot from him in that year, because that Daniel Jones contract looks worse and worse each and every day. They need to find a way to rewrite that and make that right, and I think Stafford would be the way to do that.
Yeah, I agree. And just again with this regime, right? Let's say you draft Shador at 3 and they go out there and win 5 games next year. Even if Shador looks good, they're moving on. I think your best case scenario is you bring in Stafford. In this case, you bring in Stafford, just have Shador sit, have him learn. You try and be competitive in 2025. Maybe do what the Commanders did, except minus not starting the rookie. And then 2026, you play Shador or whatever. Maybe you play him at some point in 2025. Stafford goes down or whatever. But Stafford's still got a lot left for being 37. I think both these guys are. We talked about Cooper Kupp last week. I think a lot of people are kind of just diminishing what he has left. I mean, yeah, he's going to be 32. Yeah, he's aging, but I don't think this guy is as bad as people make it seem. I mean, this guy would fit right in on a lot of NFL teams right now. I mean, the fact that people are like, oh, don't want him, he's too old. I understand the contract is a lot, but from a Giants standpoint, Cooper Kupp would be a massive upgrade over outside of Neighbors. He'd be a massive upgrade over any receiver right now on that roster behind Neighbors. Wan'Dale Robinson's solid, but you get into like the Darius Slaytons of the world. Jalen Hyatt hasn't done a whole lot. It's weak. I mean, what Bryce Ford, and they've got nobody. It's a team.
It's bad.
They've got no talent. So you tell me this is your offseason plan where you win 3 games, you go add Stafford, you add Cooper Kupp as well. You all of a sudden turn your offense from no quarterback, Malik Neighbors, and I do like Tyrone Tracy. I think he's solid. I think with Tyrone Tracy is, and it's nothing with him. And he's a 5th round pick. For a 5th round pick, he went out there last year and had a very productive year, 839 yards, 5 touchdowns. I just think the biggest thing with Tyrone Tracy is who he replaced and what Saquon did. And it's out of his control, but as a Giant fan, it's tough to debate about, oh, look at our run game. Like, just because of what happened with Saquon and everything in Philly. Yeah, Tyrone Tracy's good, but he couldn't shine Saquon's shoes. But you go Stafford, Neighbors, Kupp, Tyrone Tracy. You get Andrew Thomas back on the offensive line, which, by the way, when Andrew Thomas gets hurt, they just fall apart. Yeah. He's like the glue guy for that entire team. It's crazy. When he's out there, how much better they are, which I guess isn't really crazy. It's your franchise left tackle, but I think it also shows that they just have no replacement, their lack of depth at that position. But all of a sudden, you go from 3 wins there to being a whole lot better team. And Stafford still got a lot left in my eyes. He was 15 yards away from beating the Eagles on the road in the snow. The Stafford Neighbors, it's got to excite if you're a Giant fan.
And here's another one. Let's throw this in. Let's go same thing. Let's go Stafford, Kupp. You got Neighbors. You go draft, let's say, Amarion Hampton, the back out of North Carolina. Let's say you get him around 3 or 4. Because I think there's a few other backs. I mean, and also the way the backs are looking, you might be able to get like a Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins. You could probably grab somebody like that in round 3 or 4. Let's say you take one of those guys. Tracy is your kind of more of your scat back. You go some 2-back look, mix it up, different things. I think that's a pretty solid offense. And again, I feel like I'm a broken record. I say this almost every week. Certain guys get to certain places and free agents are more attracted to that place. So some guys might want to play with Stafford and Cooper Kupp as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's all going to start with who is playing quarterback. So if Stafford is there, I think you can get guys. If Shador's there, I also think you can get guys. The only thing kind of going back to, I'm going to use Shador because that's the one we mentioned. If Stafford is there, how much of a leash does he have? Because I don't think we've seen a lot of bad Stafford football, like off the top of my head, where you're just like, can we completely just bench this guy, get him off the field? But let's say we're 6 games in and that offense does not look great. Is Stafford on a leash? And now it's you go with Shador for the rest of the 15 games or whatever. I'm sorry, not 15. Rest of the 9, 10, 11 games or whatever the case is. And now you just wasted trading for Stafford and Kupp. You wasted picks, kind of the situation the Jets are in right now. So that's kind of the one side of it. We're just like, is it worth doing that? But if you want to win now, absolutely, I think you should do that. And I think in free agency, if they can get those two guys, I think they can make some noise and get some other guys in there.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you look at Stafford and, the places he's been, right? Detroit, made the playoffs, what, twice or three? I forget.
Yeah.
Either way, though, like in Detroit, I wouldn't say he like elevated that organization, but he came in, made the playoffs 3 times. He walked into an organization at the moment, which in 2000, when he got 2011 was his first full season of 16 games. He goes out and makes the wild card. Never won a playoff game, but had 3 wild card appearances. Prior to him coming in, this was a team that hadn't made the playoffs until 1999. My point is, he goes to Detroit, and it's not quite the turnaround that we've seen out of, Dan Campbell and Jared Goff, and obviously that. But he goes to Detroit, gets them in playoffs, competitive a little bit, mostly, though, towards the end there, pretty ugly. Not his fault, right? They hire Matt Patricia. That was a train wreck. Jim Caldwell, they ended up moving on from him after a couple years of making the playoffs. But the point I'm making is Detroit, a couple times playoffs, then goes to the Rams, first year Super Bowl. I'm not saying he's going to go to the Giants and win the Super Bowl year 1, but this is a guy that's been to 2 stops now, 2 organizations that needed some life. He provided some life in Detroit. Wasn't anything major, but and then to go to the Rams and win year 1, can he go? I don't think it's crazy to say he can go to the Giants year 1 and just because of his track record, go there and elevate the guys around him. We saw what he was able to do with the Rams and elevating Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, and obviously had a ton of success with Megatron. Like, go to Giants and make Malik Neighbors a whole lot better. You make the entire off. I mean, the upgrade from Stafford to Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito, Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean,
Tim Boyle.
If season started today, they're rolling out probably Tommy DeVito. I mean, Stafford on one leg might be your better option than Tommy DeVito. So I think you just go out and get him. You try it out. I mean, it either works or it doesn't. And I know that's not so easily said with the NFL because you don't want to set your organization behind, but your organization is already behind. There's probably not much worse you can get right now. So you're at rock bottom. Try something.
Yeah, I agree. And this regime's got to know that. They're at rock bottom. They can't afford a 6-win year next year. They need a lot more than that. Handing the keys to Shedeur in year 1 and with no proven guy or just having him start right away could be a risky move. Who knows? Maybe it works out, but and then let's say you don't give up the 3rd overall pick. Who do you take there with that 3rd overall pick? Let's say, do you take a Travis Hunter? Do you take an Abdul Carter? You upgrade the defense and then you upgrade the offense as well with Stafford and Kupp. I like that possibility. Now, the other guy too, and I think this to me is more likely. He visited with the team last year. He's always wanted to play in New York. That's Russell Wilson. And if I had to make a prediction right now, it'd probably be Russell Wilson and like Shedeur would be.
Yeah.
And Shedeur can compete with Russell Wilson, I think. I don't know if he's not going to win the job over Stafford, but he can compete and win the job with Russ. We just saw Russ going to Pittsburgh. He was okay. He was solid. Had the visit last year with the Giants. I don't know. My whole feeling with Russ is just strange.
The thing, I honestly don't think Russ is that bad. And I know everybody might feel different, but also you have to kind of take in consideration that Russ was running an offense that was invented before like color TVs were a thing. So, I mean, when you are running this 1920s offense, you kind of can't blame Russ. I don't see anyone that will be good in that offense. I mean, even Justin Fields wasn't good, and he offered a lot more mobility and those type of things. Fields wasn't good in that offense. Like, that offense has not been good since Big Ben. And even Big Ben's like last 2 years, the offense wasn't that good. So it's been a very long time since that offense has been good. So I think for Russ, I mean, you go somewhere where you can kind of play your form of ball and you can just play comfortable and kind of play loose, where it's really not much expectation, but at the end of the day, you still do want to win. You go to the Giants and you do that. And I also think they will be competitive with Russ with the right weapons around him, of course. But I mean, I think Russ, Cooper Cup, they kind of fall in that same category of some people think they are just done, completely done, washed,
Yeah.
should never like step foot on the football field again. I honestly think if Russ gets to the Giants and he's kind of given that ability to float and just be Russ,
Yeah.
he can make something happen. Pittsburgh was not the place to do that.
No, and I don't think he played that bad either in Pittsburgh,
Mm.
considering that offense has been so outdated. I don't think the relationship between him and Arthur Smith was all that great. We've talked a lot about Pittsburgh. He'll be 37.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't think he's as bad. I think the bad, I guess bad like rap around him is he's kind of, Mr. Unlimited, all the memes, like
Yeah.
I guess the big flop in Denver. But that's not what, again, like that's not what you're asking him to do, is to go into, like Denver thought they were getting Ross that can go take him over the top. Ross at this point in his career is a stopgap, and that's what he'd be right now. Now Russ himself does come with a little bit like extra. He's not quite like Rodgers, but he does gather a lot of attention. Would the Giants want that? Because Shadur already is going to gather a ton. And then you bring in Russ, who, is a popular player media-wise. I don't know. I just think, like, if you had a realistic shot to go get Stafford, I don't see why you don't just go all in on Stafford and try and make sure that happens, as opposed to, and I get, Russ is easier and probably cheaper than what Stafford will be, but like if you really are all in on trying to win and compete next season, you'd go with Stafford over Russ. But look, Russ isn't bad. I mean, he threw 16 touchdowns last year, 5 picks. He was solid for coming in 6 games in after Fields, did collapse, but that's just the Steelers. If any quarterback right now played for the Steelers, they'd collapse down the stretch and then lose in the wild card game. So, Rush and Shadur.
I kind of think from the Giants standpoint, you kind of, the only thing that scares you kind of sit back and you're just like, this is what you look like against Lamar and Joe Burrow twice a year.
Yeah.
What are you going to look like against Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, and Dak Prescott twice a year? That makes you nervous. But then you look at Stafford and you're just like, quarterback play in the NFC West is not that great. Yeah. But at the same time, he can compete. Again, 15 yards from defeating Philly on the road in the snow. We've seen what he does. So it's just like you kind of look at that and you're just like, you probably go Stafford for your best bet to compete.
Yeah, I mean, and Stafford, won the playoff game as well last year against the Vikings. You're talking about most recent success. Stafford won a Super Bowl, 3 years ago? Russ hasn't won one since he was at MetLife in 2014, I believe. So, or 2013 season, but 2014 Super Bowl. Yeah. Aaron Rodgers to the Jets, or to the Giants.
That is a landing spot. I mean,
you think he plays?
No.
You think
no,
he's hanging
not
it up?
At all. If the Giants call, I think he's going to hang it up. If there's one spot I think Aaron Rodgers goes where he might still continue to play, that's Pittsburgh, just because with that defense, he at least has a shot at winning something. Anywhere else, the other landing spots, Raiders, Giants, and Browns, I don't see him playing. You got no shot at winning anything.
I don't see it happening, but the full Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers circle would be complete if he goes to Minnesota.
Yeah.
I just think they're going to roll with J.J. McCarthy personally.
Yeah, you have to.
Like, he's sat a year now. I don't know what the point is bringing Rodgers. I mean, there's a chance J.J. McCarthy can be better next year than Rodgers is right now. That's the thing with Rodgers, where he is at in his career. There's not, like, the Jets brought in Rodgers thinking they can get them over the top. There's not that team anymore. And I think Rodgers is only going to want to go to a team where he can try and get them over the top. And maybe that's Pittsburgh, but I don't know. I heard something. I saw a report a couple weeks ago that Pittsburgh wouldn't be interested. I don't know if you saw. Did you see the Sean
Yeah.
Elliott post about going to the retirement home?
Yeah.
I think the thing with Pittsburgh is him and Mike Tomlin. I don't know if that would work.
Not at all.
There's no chance that's going to
Not
work.
at all.
Like, no way. You talk about Glenn wanting to run things his way. No chance. Would Glenn, in my opinion, would Tomlin's rather mindset, I guess, ego. No way. I just don't see that would be I don't think that'd work.
I can honestly just see Rodgers and George Pickens throwing Gatorade bottles at each other up 42 because George Pickens has 3 targets, but everyone else is feasting. Too much. Just no, too much diva-like activity or whatever. No, not at all.
I think the Raiders could be an option as well.
Yeah.
Go with Pete Carroll there for a year as a bridge, but there's not much, and that's where you kind of wonder. Like, you hear the report that Rodgers wanted to come back to the Jets. He actually pleaded. That's according to the New York Post. I don't know how true that is, but you do kind of get the point. You feel like the Rodgers needed the Jets more than the Jets need Rodgers at this point in his career. I could see him just hanging it up personally, but we'll see. Who knows?
I won't be surprised. The only thing that makes me kind of think maybe he stays or he continues to play is, again, going back to the documentary, when he talked about the Achilles, it was like, I can't end my career like this. Like, I can't go out terribly. So he might, from that angle, kind of like, I got to prove to myself, like, that's not who I am. That's the only way that I can see him continuing.
Yeah, I agree. I think too, just I guess like the counter to that, what Rodgers was saying in the documentary is how much better can he finish his career, though? I mean, if he goes to the Raiders or the Steelers and they win 6 games, it's only going to look worse.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. Anyway, let's move on to the Dallas Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, both kind of taking shots at the organization.
Absolutely.
Sending the organization a message on off-season, making moves, the Micah Parsons trade rumors. The floor is yours.
Well, where do I start? Oh, man. We are that's a very laughable organization. I mean, I just don't understand it. If it wasn't bad enough to see your 2 division rivals meet in the NFC Championship, to see your division rival, probably your biggest rival, win the Super Bowl, like completely dominate the Super Bowl, and your first thing is let's trade Micah Parsons. Doesn't make no sense. I really don't get it. To trade your best option on defense, your most consistent, reliable player, you're one dog on your team, because everyone else seems to just kind of, I'm gonna call them tunnel boys, respectfully. Hey, let's take cute outfit pictures in the tunnel before the game and let's not do anything. Not CD, not Dak, of course. Those guys can do no wrong in my eyes, but everybody else, tunnel boys for the most part. And you're talking about trading your best player when the other defensive end on the other side is a free agent. And he's like 33 and hasn't done anything in 3 years. Talking about DeMarcus Lawrence in this case. That organization just ran terribly. I don't get it. It's always going to be about a way to make headlines, and that is what CeeDee Lamb kind of mentioned, where the Parsons trade talks did come up. We're like, hey, let's do our best to just make sure that we're relevant. And I mean, Jerry Jones, you have nothing to worry about. You're always going to be relevant as long as you continue to miss the Super Bowl, because all you do is scribble on your notebook during the combine or whatever, and you never make any actual moves. So for this team, I mean, it's so bad, 'cause I've been so disassociated for so long, and then they do some coaching hires and you kind of get bought back in. And then when you get bought back in, now they're just like, hey, let's just go ahead and trade Micah Parsons. And you're just like, what did I even get back involved in this for? it just doesn't make sense that you're trying to get rid of. It doesn't make sense, but it does at the same time. Where you're trying to get rid of the one guy that has spoken up and basically called out the front office. So the side of it where you're just like, why would you do that? Because he obviously wants to win. So what are we doing? Then you look at the other side where it's just like Jerry Jones he's prideful. Jerry Jones doesn't want to be called out, and he's called out, and that is the case. I just don't get it. I mean, I don't understand how a team that was 12-5 in 3 straight seasons, and you look at 2016 where we are of course, an Aaron Rodgers just remarkable play from the NFC Championship in 2016, and it's going like that. 2018, our defense is absolutely terrible. We can't get over the Niners in 2 consecutive years, where it's just been so many playoff just disaster to the point where it's just like, okay, well, let's just go ahead and trade away everybody. Let's not do anything to help the team. I don't know. This team is so bad and ridiculous, and it's literally just the front offense, and I don't understand how the fan base somehow thinks Dak Prescott is still the problem when you have a front office that literally looked Derrick Henry in his eyes and said, you know, we're hiring, but not you.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a bad look. And we were talking about this a little bit off air. I just don't get the whole trade rumors, all this stuff, trade discussions, right? I guess trying to get rid of your top talent.
Yeah.
And yet you don't go out and try and build on the top talent. It's almost like Jerry just I don't know how to phrase this. It's almost like Jerry just expects this team with CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, Dak Prescott to do it all themselves. Like the best teams in football, you need to have good depth. You need to have guys around them. You know, it can't just be Dak. You can't take away the running back position. You can't just not take away, ignore the running back position and then ignore the number 2 receiver and expect the offense to still have success. You can't defensively. I mean, what you got Trayvon Diggs, Parsons, but you can't possibly take away a Parsons or one of those guys without giving him. It's also too, not even just that, but like just it's also too trying to keep your own homegrown talent, like keeping Micah Parsons around it. I don't know, man. It's just their whole like thought process behind roster building at this point just makes zero sense. Doesn't make any sense. It's like Dak, CeeDee, run it back every single year, hope it works without anything around them. I mean, they can make a statement, go out and make a trade for a Cooper Kupp, go out and sign T. Higgins on offense. But yeah, I mean, what was the quote again about Derrick Henry?
He doesn't fit our scheme. We would something along. He doesn't fit our scheme. We won't be good. Something like that. But I just, you know, the best way to explain it, and I know completely different roster size, but I'm going to use in sport. But I'm going to use the Boston Celtics for example of the point that I'm trying to get to. And you said it perfectly. Where's the Dak and CeeDee Lamb show?
Yep.
And Micah Parsons, you throw them in there, and it's like they're supposed to elevate and do everything. Let's look at the Celtics. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum's not having a great game. You have your Derek Whites, you have your Drew Holidays, you have your Peyton Pritchards, you have your Porzingises, your Sam Hausers that elevate their game when the stars aren't playing great. So Tatum is not having a great game. He's shooting terribly. Jaylen Brown steps it up. CeeDee Lamb is our Jason Tatum in this case. We don't have a Jaylen Brown. Or if you want to say CeeDee Lamb in this case is our Jason Tatum, Dak Prescott is our Jaylen Brown, we don't have a Porzingis. There is no other option on that offense that is going to step it up when the other two, it's just not their day. Same defensively. You have, and defense is a little different. We got some guys. We have Bland, we have Parsons, we have Diggs. So again, you got your Jaylen Brown, you got your Jason Tatum, you got your Porzingis. Where is our Derek White? We don't have a Derek White, another guy that's going to step up and not necessarily saying they need to go out there and every game completely just take over the end, but be impactful. So for those that do watch basketball, understand what I'm saying. Derek White is your guy where he might give you 18 points tonight, but if he doesn't give you 18 points, he's going to make some key stops on defense. He might give you a block or two, some steals, crash the boards. dish the ball out. Great within in the passing game as an assist man, a facilitator. We don't have that when it comes to the roster. It's just like, hey, we need Tatum and Jaylen Brown. We need 30 from you every night, while Porzingis and everybody else sits back and just watch you be great. You're not going to win like that. And that the case is, you look at some other teams. I'm going to look inside. I'm going to stay inside the division where you look at Washington. If Jaden Daniels isn't playing great, guess who is? McLaurin is. If McLaurin's not playing great, now you got De'Ami Brown coming out of nowhere. Zach Ertz is looking youthful. Just every team that has made a run playoffs or gotten to the Super Bowl has other guys that's going to step up when the stars aren't playing great. For us, it's just the stars don't look good. We're just terrible. If you watch basketball, look at the Miami Heat. When Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo are terrible, that team is terrible. They cannot score. Going back to the 8 points they scored in the fourth quarter against OKC. When the stars aren't playing great, that team is terrible. That is the Dallas Cowboys. And until they make a move, go get, again, Cooper Kupp, who should have an article posted soon about possibly him or Deebo Samuel being in a Cowboys uniform next year. Yeah. Go get somebody that's going to step up when the others aren't playing great, because right now it's going to be wash and rinse, repeat of the same thing every single year. We're never going to get anywhere.
No, and I also think this too. It doesn't send the right message to the locker room. And you could say, if you agree, right, is the fact that every year they're kind of, the last couple of years, especially last year, they're not really building behind these stars. They're not really building around these stars. It doesn't send the right message about being all in on winning if you're kind of just punting on free agency every year. Because now you get, Parsons as well, ask them to be more aggressive in the offseason. That doesn't send the right message. And I also tell you what doesn't send the right message either. And nothing against Brian Schottenheimer, but you go from moving on from Mike McCarthy, and your answer and your solution for that is Schottenheimer. Like that, and maybe they believe in him, maybe they like him, and you got to give the guy a chance. But I'm sorry, that to me, that was not the right hire. Like the Dallas Cowboys, you're the richest franchise in the world. Like, you can do so much better than Brian Schottenheimer. The name, the brand can do so much better than that. You could have went out and tried to go all in for Belichick. You could have probably made a stronger attempt for a guy like Mike Vrabel, somebody like that, as opposed to, you know what, Mike McCarthy. I would have even taken Mike McCarthy for another year over Schottenheimer. We don't know what Schottenheimer is, but at least the known in McCarthy. And right now, it's tough for any coach. That's another thing too. Like, how can you possibly look at this destination as a coach, see the front office, or not the front office, because it's Jerry Jones, it's the Jerry office, right? Because there is really nobody in the front office other than Jerry Jones.
Just him and Bam.
It's just Jerry's world. Like, how can you possibly, and maybe that was a problem, like, how could you possibly lure coaches here if you're not going to build in free agency? You're going to completely run the show and meddle some and speak all the time after games. He's got his radio show. It's everything that comes with him. And it's got to be tough for a player, and it's got to be annoying for a player. And it's the fact that they go from 12-win team, that was all, even if Dak stayed healthy last year, they weren't going to go anywhere. Because you have no talent. You have nobody on offense. And it doesn't send the right message if you're not building and you have the assets to build, and they don't.
I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say it. Our fan base might just be as uneducated as Philadelphia's fan base. If I'm just being, it's just the only thing is they are just not that bright as people. We're just not that bright when it comes to football. This organization, this fan base will look at this organization and look at all the problems and say Dak Prescott.
Yep.
So which Dak Prescott are we blaming? Are we blaming the Dak Prescott that just threw 37 and 9 the year before he was injured? Is that the Dak Prescott we're blaming? Are we blaming, are we blaming CeeDee Lamb, who is Dak Prescott's best target, who just broke the record for and just broke the single season record for, I believe, receptions and yards? Like, are those the guys that we're blaming, the ones that actually do put us over top? Because I'm not really understanding it when, like you perfectly said, this team is looking at free agency and going into free agency and not making anything happen whatsoever. So, I mean, just say we're going to go back to last year. You miss on Derrick Henry. You miss on Saquon. Great. Aaron Jones was available for like 17 hours. And Aaron Jones is actually a part owner of the Dallas Cowboys. If you've watched Green Bay, completely punched him in the face in the playoffs, basically forever. Aaron Jones destroys Dallas. And instead of you picking up the phone because hey, we can't beat him, have him join us, you don't even do that. 17 hours later, he stays in division, he goes to Minnesota. And he didn't have a great year, but it was an upgrade from Rico Dowd, who I think had a solid year, but he is not a back that's going to lead you to a Super Bowl. And you have a 32-year-old wide receiver who's making almost 20 a year that I think played 8-9 games this year. And Brandon Cooks we're talking about. They traded a 4th-round pick for Jonathan Mingo. It's just like, what are you guys doing?
I know, and that that might have been one of the worst because the season was over.
Yeah, that's the thing.
At that point, you were building around Cooper Rush.
And he absolutely did nothing at all. So now maybe next year he has more of an impact on the offense, but it's like this is an unserious fan base, and I hope Philly winning the Super Bowl lights a fire under Jerry Jones, because if not, I mean, that's Philly's division for a long time. I think Washington competes with them, but it's just going to be Phillies for a very long time until they start to take things seriously. But I mean, I don't want to keep going on to rant and rant and rant. Everybody and their mother knows how just mishandled this organization is. So until they do something, again, I am so disassociated. I don't even care too much until they prove me wrong.
And you look at the division too. Like I think too, just the way that the division built up. The team that just won the Super Bowl went out and signed Saquon Barkley. Like the fact, I think that makes it even worse. The fact, everyone talks about how bad it makes the Giants look. There's part of it too where it makes the Cowboys look bad. They had a chance to go out and get Derrick Henry. Yep. Instead, they watched a team in their division go out and get Saquon Barkley, and they went and win the Super Bowl. I'm not saying Derrick Henry, who lost in the divisional round to the Bills, not saying he would have led the Cowboys to a Super Bowl, but just that in its own, where you went into the season, Cowboys had a need at running back, Eagles had a need at running back. Cowboys didn't do anything. Eagles did something. They won a Super Bowl. Cowboys missed the playoffs. That's not a coincidence.
And for Jerry Jones, I mean, we're not actually to go out there and sign the Avengers. Like, that's not what it is. But if you really look at the Eagles outside of the draft, they made 2 moves that completely just altered this season. That was Saquon and that was Zach Bond as far as free agency signings. And look what both of them did on both sides of the ball. So it's not a lot to go out there and you go get maybe a running back here, a wide receiver here, a linebacker here. That's it. It's so simple, and the Eagles made it literally look so easy that they won a Super Bowl in the first year. And I'm going to use Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott in this case scenario, where a lot of people think Jalen Hurts don't throw the ball too well. We have also said that ourselves. But from the Cowboys fans, they're like, hey, we don't want Dak to throw the ball 40 to 45 times a game. You probably need a great running back if that is the case. You don't go get you a great running back. Instead, you keep everything in-house, and where it does turn to him having to drop back and throw the ball 40-plus times a game. So you kind of you get mad when Dak has to drop back and throw the ball 40 times a game when that is the best bet to win games because you can't run the ball. But you're not mad at the front office for not going to get a running back. So, again, you need to put the blame on the right people. It's not the quarterback that is doing everything in his power to win games. It is literally the front office that has failed this organization for the last 30 years that we have not done anything. And I don't know if you know, but Dak Prescott has not been a quarterback for the last 30 years, how some people make it seem, where all the playoff just not being able to get there. It's just everything before birth, during all the time, elementary school, middle school. It's always been Dak Prescott. He has not been a quarterback for 30 years for the Dallas Cowboys. He is literally just the next pawn that is going to be in that loop or that same cycle of Jerry Jones at front office failing the team. It's just his turn to take the blame.
Yeah. It's if you wear the star in your helmet and you're the quarterback, you're going to take a lot of blame. You're going to face everything. It's just how it is. There's not much Dak can do, unfortunately, that is going to draw praise. There just isn't. But that's with any of them, really.
Yeah,
I mean, the
it
guy
doesn't
threw
matter who
36
you bring
touchdowns
in.
last year and was top quarterback in the NFL, and everyone killed him.
And we act like that's Zach Wilson that we're watching every single Sunday. Like
Yep.
I mean, the guy was just probably should have won the MVP and had a down year with some injuries, but there's no talent. He literally he threw the ball to me for half the season.
Yeah.
Like you can't blame him for not having a great year.
No. It's a tough spot for them. And bad ownership is the worst place you can be as a sports franchise. It's the worst place you can be because you can't fire him. You can't, and especially Jerry Jones. No way. There's no chance he is selling. There's a better chance I own the Jets next year than Jerry Jones selling. All right. Travis Kelce retirement. Is he hitting the, I don't know, retirement tour? Retirement?
I don't know. That is so tough with the year that he just had, and I'm not saying that in a good way.
Yeah.
Career
Yeah.
low in yards and touchdowns.
Was a non-factor in the Super Bowl, and
completely
was really was a non-factor in the playoffs. I mean, yes, he had a good game against Houston. Yeah, but it's 19 yards and 39 yards the last two games. So, he finished his postseason with 13 catches for 175 yards and a touchdown. To put that in comparison to last year, he had 32 catches for 355 yards, and the year before that, 27 catches for 257 yards. So massive down year, 4 touchdowns as well in 2022, 3 touchdowns last year. Ugly postseason, especially in the Super Bowl. That was ugly. There was some bad misses between him and Mahomes. He's wearing off a little bit. You could tell. Yeah. He's starting to gradually decline, and it's obvious. He went from 7 straight seasons of 1,000 yards to the last 2 years. The first time he's had back-to-back non-1,000 yard seasons since his first 2 years in the league in 2014 and 2015. He's going to be 36 in October. He's got the whole, outside, we all know the outside world, his out of football life, which is, I guess, highly publicized, I guess. I don't know. He's going to go on tour with Taylor Swift next year. Is that his future?
I think he plays one more and he's done.
I think so.
Just because you get guys back, you get Rashee Rice back. Let's say they bring Hollywood Brown back. You kind of look at it where it's just like, is that going to completely phase him out of the offense, or is that going to open him up in the offense with all the speed guys? You literally just don't know. You have no idea, but washed. Yeah. He just looked washed.
Yeah, he looked old. His I guess downfall is, I don't want to say it's like he's like hitting as a brick wall. Like some guys just fall off immediately. It's a gradual decline, but I mean, 8 touchdowns the last 2 seasons. He had 12 alone in 2022. Yeah. The yards, first time he's been under 900 yards again since 2015. So, yeah, I mean, it's maybe not really gradually decline. It's fallen off pretty good here. Yeah. Back-to-back seasons, under 100 receptions. His targets, too, have been down, which I think tell you something as well. Something that was so good with Kelce is his ability to just find holes in the defense. Yeah. Didn't see a whole lot of that this year. And I think that caused some of the targets to be down. I agree, though. I do think he returned just because of, number one, they lost. I could see Kelce wanting to next year be like a retirement tour for him, where it feels like a guy that would just one more, win a Super Bowl, and then sail off. And also, we talked about this last year. Travis Kelce potentially retiring, right? There was some rumors. It just feels like this is, until he does, it's going to be like a year-by-year thing. So I think it gives him one more year. However, The Athletic reported the other day that if Kelce does choose to retire, the Chiefs want to know his decision by the new league year, March 14th. So this is something that's going to have to ramp up here pretty quickly. This is not something where in May or June, we're still talking about Kelce. Is he playing? Is he not playing? Like his brother. Remember his brother, it took him a little bit to contemplate coming back or not. And he ultimately decided, of course, to move on. But there was some reports of, if he wants to come back, he can come back for training camp. But, and we can adjust his schedule. But that can't be the case here with Travis. Seems like with the Chiefs. And it's as it should be. Because if he does retire, the Chiefs got a hole to fill then at tight end. And the Chiefs, just as a team, they've got to improve the roster. I think it finally caught up to them, some of the lack of talent on this team when they faced a very talented Eagles team. They got to fix the offensive line or figure that out because, my God, now 2 Super Bowls has Mahomes running for his life. So he got some adjustments. All right.
I know we said just last thing on Kelsey. I mean, I know you said possible retirement towards Super Bowl. I don't think they're getting back. That's a hot take on February 15th, 2024, but the Chiefs will not be in the Super Bowl next year. With that being said, Kelsey's last year's is next year. I think they don't get back.
Do you think it's just they don't want they're just not going to be very good, or you think another team in the AFC is going to rise?
Yeah, another team's going to beat them. I don't know who that team might be, but somebody's going to knock them off.
I'll tell you who I'm already buying stock in right now. And I know the offseason has to start and they could look a whole lot different here very soon. But you give them just an average defense next year, I feel like a big year's coming for the Bengals. Then we have to see what happens with T. Higgins, right? But if they're back and they figure things out this offseason, I'm gonna ride the Bengals train. Like I'm all aboard the Bengals train again.
That's actually a great take. I mean, if their defense wasn't just beyond terrible, I think they knock off Kansas City this year.
Yeah. And I mean, look, they're one dumb penalty away from knocking them off 2 years ago. But yeah, I mean, and Trey Hendrickson too. You've got that as well, that whole situation. So they could potentially lose Hendrickson and T. Higgins in the same offseason. Then I'd probably change my tone. But look, Myles Garrett's floating out there. You tell me the Bills get Myles Garrett, I don't see how they can't be the favorites coming out of the AFC. Yep. That's been the one thing that they've missed is like a legitimate all-pro perennial pass rusher. They've got, Epinesa and Greg Rousseau solid, but they're not Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
Does that put them over the top? Ravens, we know, will be in the conversation again. What'll be this year's Broncos? Panthers.
I think so. I'm honestly buying stock in the Panthers for like 9 games this year.
I'm actually buying stock that the Panthers might actually just make the playoffs. I'm buying the Panthers playoff stock. Don't worry, we will not be destroying Charlotte Sport this year.
No, not this year. We're gonna pick a new team. We don't know who that's gonna be quite yet. Probably roll out with the Saints because why not?
Or maybe Tennessee. They just stink. Or Jacksonville. Jacksonville, actually.
Yeah.
Liam Cohen, that guy's so cringy. But it won't be Carolina. Carolina deserves some praise.
Yeah.
Anyway, any closing thoughts?
Nope. Thank you all for watching, and thanks for this offseason journey with us as we get into our transition.
Yes. Like what you said, appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll have a lot more content every single week throughout the offseason. Free agency right around the corner. And yes, enjoy your week. We'll be back here next week. Talk to you soon.